Welcome back. As I said previously, one of the best things about this program is creating sort of simple geometric shapes and things that we know need to be a certain distance and have certain construction. So what I'm going to show you now is what we call our grid lock and our step lock. Now that relates to these three little buttons over here. Now hopefully you can see, it depends on the resolution of the recording, but you can definitely see it on your screen. There's little dots that appear on your canvas. Now you watch, if you press this button, those little dots disappear, you press it on and the dots appear. All that is giving us a basic grid framework to help us with our designing. Now when I double click on my grid, it comes up and it tells me what my grid spacing is. So at the moment it's 1 by 1 centimeter and I've got a 10 by 10 centimeter box. But if I change this, say to 20 millimeters, which is 2 centimeters, and I leave my step spacing for the moment, you can see I've now got less dots, and if you do that on your screen you'll definitely be able to see the dots. But if I go back into it, I double click and I want 5 millimeter spacing, you will see now I have quite a number of dots, and if you do that with me on your screen you'll also see how many dots. What's the point of all the dots? Well, firstly it helps us as a bit of a guideline. Now we can turn on our grid lock, and the step lock is exactly like the grid lock, but it's a bunch of dots that we can't see. Usually I just work with grid lock, so I leave step lock off, but if you want sort of two sets of grids, you turn step lock on, and you're actually in your grid, you start playing with your step spacing. But for the moment, I'm just going to show you the grid so it's not too confusing. So what I do is, as you can see, if I make myself a line, at the moment, this line is not connected to any dots, neither is this one. Now I go back and I do my delete, so I undo my two lines. Now the reason why they're not connected to any dots is because I've got my grid in the background, it's on, but what I don't have is I don't have my grid lock on, which is this button over here. So when I turn this on and you draw a line, it will only ever let you, as you can see the mouse hopefully hugs, and it happens on your screen as well, to one of those points. I can't now draw a line that does not join to one of those two spots. So you can see again, it helps us make perfectly horizontal, vertical lines, angled lines, and especially when we need to know their measurements. So you can see there, the function of the grid lock is to make sure we have things always joining to our dots. So you can see here, if I wanted to make a 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3 centimeter box that goes over here and comes down to the corner, and my 3 centimeter box then is connected over on the side here. We connect this up, it then goes 1/2 centimeter, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, back the other way. So you can see there that that's a box that I've created, and I actually know how big that box is because when I double click on my grid I know I've got a 5 millimeter spacing and I can add that together. So it's very important that you have the grid on when you want to do set geometric shapes, because it can be very helpful. Again, if I want to create a box and then I wanted a line that didn't go from 2 points, all I very simply do is turn the grid lock off and then I can draw my line, and as you can see it then gives me the freedom to put my lines wherever I want again. So often, depending on what I'm designing, I have the grid lock on for some of the time and then I'll turn it off for later, and when I want to present my design I just turn the grid off totally and it gives me a nice white blank canvas to show off my design. So that's just a couple of little buttons up here. Remembering again, the grid lock and the grid is the one you probably want to set most often. If you want to have sort of two grids operating at once and you're doing some quite detailed work, you can set the step lock. So that's the basics of the grid lock and how it works. Again, you can also do a design, so I can make a shape that goes on my grid lock, but if I then need to make another line that doesn't fit that current grid, I can change it and make it quite intense, so 2 mil by 2 mil, and then it's going to give me a whole bunch of little dots with a new grid work. So sometimes that's also very useful. Now, if we zoom in, you can see this line here was on my old grid of 5 by 5, but at the moment it doesn't look like it's in the new grid, which is 2 by 2. So that presents as a problem, especially if I wanted a line going from that dot, but I want it not on the line, I want to actually sorry, not going to that dot, I actually want it joining to the line. That's where it brings in this command over here, which is what we call the attach. So we turn off the grid lock. So now this can go anywhere. I could visually just try and connect the two endpoints, but when we zoom in, you'll find that they're not actually joined. So the best way is you use the attach command, which pretty much means it's going to join, even though you can see there it's not right on the end, it's close enough. I just click, it's automatically joined there. And same when I click over here, I now know that that's attached, and when I click in this general sort of corner, it also attaches. So there you can see that sometimes if you don't want to just use your grid to make sure all your lines meet and the ends meet, you can also use the attach command, and that will attach it to the corners of any lines that you're near to. So that's tutorial 2. Move on to the next one.